Time to look at the papers now, see what the headlines are across Nigeria. And joining me now via Skype is Managing Editor, the Avalon Daily, Ayodele Adio. Ayodele, good morning. It's good to have you join me now.
Good morning. Thank you for having me,
Good
Mike.
morning. All right, let's begin with the News Direct. The News Direct is where we start from right now, and it says, Edo mining sites. Federal government declares BUA's mining lease non-existent. And Dangote owns the Obu-Okpela mines. As GED is saying this, okay. All right, from there, let's go to the Daily Times. Federal government threatens to review partial lockdown measures, expresses concerns over breach of ban on interstate travels, and urges state governments to embark on wider community testing, and cautions against reopening of schools, television viewing centers, sports stadia. Okay, I guess this will interest my guests when we open the discussions. All right, let's go to the Blueprint newspaper now. Your strike, ill-timed, dangerous. The federal government to doctors says lives lost irreplaceable. And ARD exempts members attending to COVID-19 patients for 2 weeks before they can join the strike. And those are stories on the Blueprint newspaper. Daily Times is next now. Name traditional rulers aiding bandits. Katsina residents tell the federal government. And we are deliberating on the matter. Katsina Emirate is saying this. And stop the blame game. All right, get to work. That's what the thing is saying. Okay, that's a Daily Trust. National economy is next. COVID-19. Employers, labor set aside interests, rally to save jobs. Tourism sector seeks 50 billion naira federal government grant. Okay, stories on the national economy. The Leadership newspaper is next. Killings. Governors vow crackdown on bandits and others, and seeks common front to engage security agencies, all right? And the PMB Zulum meet in Aso Rock. That's the governor of Borno State. Okay, let's look at the Leadership newspaper now. I guess let's talk about this with my guest. Okay, all right, Ayodele, let me bring your attention to the story on the front page of the Leadership newspaper, which is talking about the killings. It says governors vows crackdown on bandits and others and seek common front to engage security agencies. Now, the point there is, when it comes to the security challenges, there has been some level of spike in recent times. As we see that spike, ironically, the Operation Lafia Dole and all the military and security agencies have also intensified more effort with more equipment and also trying to tackle the security or the terrorists headlong. I wonder what you make of this ironical spike in operation of the security agencies and also of the terrorists.
I think the situation in the Northwest, in Katsina, Zamfara, and of course in Kaduna have been embarrassing, to say the least. The crisis group has just put out a report that said that close to 10,000 people have been killed by bandits in the last decade in crises involving these bandits, and I would rather call them terrorists in that region. So you have villages that are attacked, hundreds of people killed, houses burned, and these operations typically last for hours. The excuse you hear every single time is that these attacks happen in remote villages where access to these villages are difficult for security agencies to respond on time. Now, if bandits can access those villages on time, kill people, maim them, rape their women, and get away with it, there should not be any excuse for the security agencies to say that the access to those villages are difficult and so they cannot respond on time. Except, of course, what we are going to see is that the lives of certain Nigerians are expendable and it means absolutely nothing to the government. And that cannot be so, and that cannot be allowed to happen in our country. And let me say this, Mike. I think we're treading on very, very, very shaky waters here, because there's a terrorist group called the Ansaru, and they've been struggling to get a foothold in the Northwest because that's where they operate, and that's where they are trying to gain a foothold in. Now, if we continue to allow these bandits to kill, maim, and get away with it, we're emboldening the Ansaru terrorist group to such a point that they are able to now carry on sophisticated and coordinated attack across the Northwest. And that will be disastrous. I mean, so I think that the response that we've been seeing over time has been hardly coordinated. What needs to happen is that, first of all, we need a diplomatic solution to this to ensure that countries in the Sahel, particularly Niger, Chad, and northern Cameroon, and of course Mali, that northern Cameroon that we share borders with, should stop the free flow of these bandits from those countries into our country. Except we stop that free flow of movement of these terrorists and these evil groups of persons into our country, we will not be able to deal with this issue decisively. And that is where the battle should start. Until we stop that flow, we cannot begin to make any meaningful progress.
All right. Now, if we have to follow what the headline says directly, governors vowing to crack down on bandits, the governors don't really control the security agencies. They have a unitary hierarchy from all the way from Abuja, the police, the military, the SSS, and all of that. How much can the governors really do in this instance? Okay, it seems I lost that signal there from Ayodele Adio, our guest, who is helping us review the papers this morning. And we are certainly looking at security challenges in the northwest of Nigeria. I understand he is back now. All right, Ayodele, I was asking you, the governors don't control the security agencies in that regard because they have their chain of command, which is sourced from Abuja, from the police to the military to DSS. How much can the governors really do in this instance if they are vowing to ensure that they crack down on bandits in the northwest of the country? Okay.
Enable these excuses any longer. These governors will not complain to you that they don't have the control of the police when they want to muscle their political opponents. They use the police to do the things that they want to do at the time that they want to do those things, but then turn around to tell you that they don't have control over the police when it's time to secure the lives of people in their state. So, it has to be one or the other. You can't have control over the police when it's time to pick up a 71-year-old man, for instance, was arrested swiftly in Katsina because he insulted the governor. He was picked up, arrested, and detained. So how can you have the control of the police to crack down on critics, but then you tell me you don't have the control to deal with bandits because the control is from Abuja? So we should stop pandering to these excuses. The governors, the 36 governors, are part of the police council, together, which make decisions on the police with the president, because the president is the chairman of the police council. So they have a say in the affairs of the police in this country, and they can determine the direction to which the police can go in our country. So we should stop these excuses at the expense of the lives and properties of people. If these governors find the political will to nip this crisis in the bud, I think that they are able and they are capable to do it. What needs to happen is a coordinated regional response backed by political will to ensure that every life in the North matters and the situation will be dealt with decisively.
Okay.
But if
now,
before
I let you go, Ayodele, Dele, sorry for interrupting you, but before I let you go, now the point there is there are also some reports that traditional rulers are also implicated or indicted in aiding some of the bandits. If that is the case, if that report is anything to go by, how more compounded is this situation?
Mike, again, you see why this problem continues to persist? I've read the same reports that you're talking about, where certain traditional rulers have been accused of aiding and abetting these criminals. If you have credible evidence that there are traditional rulers who are sabotaging the efforts of the police or the military, the right thing to do is to apprehend these traditional rulers. Is there any law in our country that stops you from arresting or interrogating a traditional ruler who has been found wanting for a crime? There's absolutely none. So if you have pointed or you have found out through thorough investigation that there are traditional rulers who are sabotaging the efforts of the Nigerian military or the police, then it's incumbent on the government to move swiftly and apprehend those traditional rulers. Why do you continue to complain to the common man who is helpless, who buries his family members every day, that look at the people causing your trouble, and when he cannot do anything about it? And you who has the bully pulpit, you who has the power to make the change happen, the power to arrest, the power to interrogate, are simply releasing press statements while people die every day. So Mike, I think the problem here is we have entertained the excuses of governors for too long. We have entertained the excuses of some security chiefs for too long.
All right, it's time for action.
Of lives. And this has to stop.
Okay. All right, we have to leave you here now. Thank you very much, Ayodele Adio, for your time on the program. We really appreciate you. Let's head into the papers now, see what the headlines are this morning. And I have joining me via Skype, Managing Editor, the Avalon Daily, Ayodele Adio. Ayodele, good morning. It's good to see you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Great. Now, let's begin with the News Direct newspaper now. Edo mining sites, that's from News Direct. Edo mining sites, federal government declares BUA's mining leases non-existent. And Dangote owns the Obu Okwala mines. All right. And from there, let's go to, from the News Direct, let's go to the Daily Times. Daily Times says the federal government threatens to review partial lockdown measures, expresses concerns over breach of ban on interstate travels, and urges state governments to embark on wider community testing, and cautions against the reopening of schools, television viewing centers, and sports stadia. Okay, that's what you see on Daily Times. From there, let's go to the Blueprint newspaper. Your strike, ill-timed, dangerous. That's federal government is saying this to the doctors who are on strike. It says lives lost irreplaceable. ARD exempts members attending to COVID-19 patients for 2 weeks. That's a Blueprint newspaper. All right, Daily Trust is next now, and he says, name traditional rulers aiding bandits. Katsina residents tell federal government. We're deliberating on the matter. Katsina Emirate is saying this. Stop the blame game. Okay, I guess certainly this is going to interest my guest when we open discussion in few seconds or about a minute from now. From there, let's go to the national economy. COVID-19, employers, labor set aside interest rally to save jobs. Tourism sector, 650 billion naira for grants. Right, that's what you see on the national economy. And leadership is the last one we're seeing now. Killings, governors vow crackdown on bandits. Others seek common front to engage security agencies. And PMB, that's President Muhammadu Buhari and Zulum meet in Asurok. That's Zulum is the governor of Borno State. Okay, Ayodele, let me draw your attention to this, the story on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper that says, name traditional rulers aiding bandits, Katsina residents tell the federal government. Now, when it comes to the knowledge of what is going on beyond the scenes, no one knows it more than the government, because they are like the God here on earth when it comes to access to information, access to security, and things like that. So when traditional rulers are accused of being behind or aiding bandits one way or the other. And government is still looking at one way to see whether these issues are true or not. I wonder what you make of this.
I mean, it's a very disheartening situation for me because, just like you rightfully said, the federal government that is making the allegation is the one responsible for collecting as much security information, more than anybody could ever do. It has control of the DSS, it has control of the military, control of the police, and has all the apparatus for collecting intelligence. So if you are carefully or you're cocksure that there are traditional rulers who are sabotaging the efforts of the military or sabotaging the efforts of the local police in these states, why are you wasting any time and not apprehending these traditional rulers? Because there's nothing in the Constitution that says you cannot interrogate or arrest a traditional ruler that has been found wanting for crimes as serious as banditry and responsible or abating the murder of thousands of innocent lives. So if you have that solid information and you're cocksure, nothing should stop you from swinging into action. But here we are, reading on the pages of newspapers, that certain traditional rulers are sabotaging the efforts or abating or shielding criminal elements in the Northwest. And it's embarrassing to say the least, because what you're telling the people at the end of the day is you're completely left on your own, because the people of Katsina, and I'm glad that they've challenged the federal government to name those traditional rulers. They are the ones who are burying their children every day. They are the ones who are burying their wives and their husbands. They are the ones who cannot go to their farms. They are the ones who have their livelihoods completely destroyed. And here you are again telling them that they are traditional rulers who are sabotaging the efforts, and you are not doing anything about those traditional rulers. And like I said, to say the least, it's embarrassing.
All right. Now, I think about a year ago, a local government chairman in one of the northwestern states was arrested and by the security agents that he was indicted in assisting bandits in the like. When it comes to the issue of fifth columnist, could this be the reason why it is challenging to really stamp out banditry or even terrorism, as the case may be, because the security agencies are really working hard to ensure that they bring normalcy to those environments?
To be honest with you, Mike, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's, just a click on the button and you can deal with banditry and insecurity in northern Nigeria. No, it's a difficult situation to handle. It's a situation that has been brewing for at least 3 decades in northern Nigeria. It's the consequences of several years of neglect, bad governance, lack of planning, and series of corruption from senior public officials. So it's not an easy thing to deal with 3 decades of problems, by the click of a button. But what you expect to see is some level of decisiveness, is some level of coordination by northern governors. It's some level of urgency by public officials who are committed to dealing with this problem. Unfortunately, what we have heard in the last 2 years is simply excuses. And I tell you the top 3 excuses that you hear every time. One is that our borders are porous. And so you have all of these criminal elements who are coming in from Mali, Libya, Chad, Niger, Burkina Faso into our country. The question to ask is, if our borders are porous, who is charged with the responsibility to protect and man our borders? It's the same government that is supposed to ensure that our territorial integrity is not desecrated by bandits or terrorist elements operating in the Sahel. The second excuse you hear is that the bandits are operating in remote areas where the roads are bad, and so it is difficult for security agencies to respond on time. The question I ask you, Mike, who is responsible for constructing the roads to these villages? And if so, And if the roads are bad and you have not built those roads, how come the bandits have access to those roads to go into those villages, kill people, and disappear, whereas the security agencies cannot do the same? The third excuse you hear again is that there's a lot of unemployment and youth unrestiveness across the northwestern Nigeria. Yes, the north, by the statistics that were just released by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, is the poorest region in the country with the highest level of unemployment and the highest illiteracy rates in the country. Whose responsibility is it to educate its citizens, to ensure that there are meaningful opportunities for the people, and to ensure that young people have jobs? So you see that on every excuse that the government is making, it is falling right flat on its face, because it's supposed to be responsible for fixing the very problems that it's complaining about. So until government begins to take responsibility for the tens of thousands of lives that have been lost in northern Nigeria, and to begin to fix the problem decisively, and to wear the boots of emergency in the north, nothing is going to change. It will be government after government, death after death, and we'll continue to entertain these excuses. And I don't know how long we're going to continue like this.
All right, now in the face of all of this, we still see that security votes and budgets for security is still given priority. Would you say there are justification for all of this if we still see banditry and herdsmen and insurgency in parts of the states, and even kidnapping in many of them too?
I mean, we've been spending billions. The defense has been getting the highest budgets in the country, and we've been spending billions in insecurity, particularly the war in the Northeast. But holistically, you can question the way our security votes are being spent. So if you look at the police apparatus around the country, the police which is supposed to be responsible for internal security, you will realize that most of the police stations across the country are poorly equipped. And here's the funny thing, and I give an example of how you know that most police stations are poorly equipped across the country. Every time that there's a major challenge in any state, you always hear that there's an IG team that is going to be deployed to that state. Usually, it is DCP Kyari, who and his men are deployed to that state to handle the problem. So what it tells me is that you have just one competent unit in the police force who has the capability and the competencies to crack difficult security situation, whereas you are supposed to have that kind of team with that capabilities replicated across the 36 states of the country, if not the 774 local government. Because how many places can DC Kyari be in? He can't be in Lagos, he can't be in Jos and Benin at the same time. So the funding of the police has to be such that it goes into its training to ensure that the police are better trained. It has to go into intelligence gathering to ensure that the police are equipped to gather information and intelligence better. It has to go into the equipping of these police officers to ensure that they can respond better to crime and security challenges, so that we don't rely too much on the military. And the list is endless.
Okay.
So there's a lot of spending that needs to be done in intelligent way to ensure that we get productivity and we get optimal results from security agencies. But at the moment, it just looks like we're spending on tanks and bullets, and the results have not been quite impressive.
Okay, we have to leave you here now. Thank you so much, Ayodele Adio, for your time on the program. Really appreciate you.